Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today, we have a guest that you probably already know. And if you don't, you better follow him right now because Roger Wakefield is one of the biggest personalities in the skilled trades and he's taken his mission to the next level. We talk all about his journey through the trades, beginning with dropping out of high school to be a plumber, then taking his skills to entrepreneurship, starting, running, and growing his own business, all the way up to his exit just 2 years ago. Now, Roger is leveraging the power of social media with a goal of impacting the lives of over 3 million tradespeople. Tune in and listen to the end to hear Roger's incredible definition of success. And before I get into my signature intro, I just want to let you know that we are in the process of unveiling the next big thing by Blue is the New White. Check it out today at https://bitnew.coach. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. You can now find this podcast on iHeartRadio, SiriusXM, and Pandora. As always, we rely on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Roger Wakefield. I am super excited about our guest today. Somebody you might have seen, somebody I hope you've seen all over the internet, especially if you're a fan or you're in the skilled trades. Mr. Roger Wakefield, welcome to the show, my friend.
Gosh, it's a pleasure to be here. Look, I've known of you for a long time. We've been connected socially in some different ways, so this is something I really look forward to.
Awesome, man. That makes two of us. I'm a big fan of yours as well. Love what you're doing out there. I love your mission and really just kind of how you present it. You know, you've got a unique personality in that you can project this stuff, dare I say, further than most. So, man, I'm excited to have our conversation today. So, for those few who are listening who don't know who you are, can you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and give us an idea of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
You know, I'll start off everything as I'm Roger Wakefield and I'm just a plumber.
Right on.
And, you know, to be 100% honest, that's what I am. I started plumbing in 1980. I quit school the middle of my junior year. And I was working in a restaurant and I had a buddy working with me and we're working late one night. And he's came up to me and said, "Look, are you going to do this forever?" And I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about? I'm 16 years old. I'm managing a restaurant." He said, "Yeah, but what happens if you quit or get fired?" And I'd never really thought about that. But he said, "Who's going to hire a 16-year-old restaurant manager?" So we talked a little more that night and he told me about his father and his 3 brothers that were plumbers and how they loved what they did. They loved their jobs. They had houses, apartments, things like that, and vehicles. And man, it seemed like a good life. It was a couple of weeks later, I either quit or probably got fired. And I ended up calling one of his brothers. I said, "Hey, look, can you help get me a job in plumbing?" And the company he was working for was looking for people. I think I actually had to lie about my age at the time, to be honest. But I got a job. Went to work, and I worked the last half of my junior year and the summer before my senior year, and I loved it. Well, during the course of that summer, a ex-girlfriend or a girlfriend at the time, whatever, Lori called me one day and she said, "You know, I could never marry anybody that didn't graduate high school." And I thought, you know, I guess I need to go back. And luckily I did. We never got married, just to throw that out there. But, you know, things happen for a reason. And after I graduated high school, I tried a couple other things, but I got back into plumbing. And I love plumbing. It's one of those things. And I realized it luckily right there during the end of my junior year. There's so much pride in the trades and building stuff and doing the things that we do. And looking back at it now and talking to a lot of other tradesmen, there's so many professions that there is no pride in what they do. They show up, they do a job. They've got a license in their pocket or they've got a degree on the wall, but they don't do anything that amounts to anything. And look, I don't mean that bad, but think about you. in the towns you've been in, how many times do you drive around and point at a building and say, hey, you know, I built that? And I mean, we talk about it like it was our building. We did it single-handedly.
Yeah.
But we take that kind of pride in what we do. And I thought that was so cool. Now, over the course of time, I got out of it a couple of times and tried a couple of different things, but I always got right back into it. So believe it or not, I'm a heck of a bartender. I was a licensed bodyguard and bouncer here in Texas, or bodyguard and security guard. Bouncer, you don't have to have a license for. But I was also a licensed cosmetologist and massage therapist. I got out and tried a few different things, but I always end up back in plumbing. And about 7-8 years ago, I guess I opened my own company, and I spent a lot of money. I actually spent about $47,000 to make my phone stop ringing. And you think about that as a company owner. We listen to what marketing companies tell us. We do what they tell us. And it doesn't always work. So after spending that kind of money, I decided that I was going to learn social media, and I was going to learn it because I had reached out to a bunch of other companies and they could not tell me anything that made sense about social media. So I went to a conference, I learned about YouTube, and came back to the office. And I told my team, we're going to start doing YouTube, and we're going to start right now. So that was literally 5.5 years ago. We started doing 3 videos a week, every week, a month later. A couple of years later, we cut it down to 2. Then we threw live streams in there on Mondays and then changed them to Saturdays. But we started doing that about 5.5 years ago. And nowadays it is what it is. It's not a bad deal. The good thing is I sold my company 2 years ago, and now I do social media full time.
That's amazing. All right, I'm gonna stop you right there for a second, and we're gonna go back, and I've got a couple of questions here. So when you say you quit school your junior year, you were talking about high school, and so that's kind of when you started getting into plumbing. You had to lie about your age, which is fascinating. Because your friends, is that what you said, told you that they love their job? Plumber?
My best friend, one of my best friends growing up.
Okay.
His father and his older 3 brothers were all plumbers.
Yeah.
And I knew all of them. So it made sense that, wow, you know, these guys like it. They're a lot like me. I'm a lot like them. You know, I'm just going to try it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. And I just saw something, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I just see something on Indeed not long ago where they ranked the 20 happiest professions, and plumbers was up there, weren't they? Am I wrong in that?
I remember seeing something like that.
Okay.
And I don't remember where. But I mean, think about you. Think about me. When I drive down the road every day, because I'm lucky. I started out as a commercial remodel. So I've done commercial, I've done residential, I've done industrial, I've done new construction, I've done service work. I started out non-union. I joined the union for 20 something years. Now I'm non-union again, or was before I sold my company. I've done a little bit of everything, and I love what I do. And it's funny, Josh, because I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and I had ran into him 6 months earlier at a conference, and him and I were talking, and somebody else was standing there. I turned around and walked off, and I'd said something to my buddy. I said, look, man, I love plumbing. It's a lot of fun. And I walked off, and the guy standing there talking to him looks at him and says, do you really think he loves plumbing? He's like, oh my God, have you ever heard him talk about it? Says this guy can go on and on about plumbing all day long. But I do. I mean, even to this day, I love the analytical. I love the looking for problems and being able to solve people's problems. And I do. I think, you know, look, if I'm not going to argue with Indeed, they probably did a lot more research at it than I did. But I would say plumbers are probably some of the most happiest people because we get to solve people's problems. We make good money, and we go home every day knowing we did something that was beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's more than we can say for several of the professions out there, right? And we're gonna get into some of that in a minute. But I want to dig in a little bit more to this the happiness factor, the plumbing. So is that what you would say to, say, a group of students? Right. I mean, when you're talking to kids, because I know you do this kind of work, right? You love talking to people about the skilled trades. You love let's call it arming students, right, with the knowledge necessary to make an educated decision of whether or not they want to go to college and get a white collar career or go the blue collar route, specifically plumbing, you know. But is that how you frame it? And if it is, how does that resonate with the kids? I'm super curious about this.
You know, I frame it different ways. You've got to listen to them, find out what's important to them. And, you know, we're all different. We all communicate in a different style. We hear in a different style. But my thought is, you got to let the kids know, you know, do you enjoy going to school every day? No. Okay. What if you had a job that you enjoyed going to every day, where you love building things or fixing things? And that's part of what I ask people when I help recruit them into the trades, because I try that every day. But it's, do you like fixing things or do you like building things? And people that love building things, I'm like, look, you need to be in new construction. People that like fixing things, you know what? You need to be in service work. Yeah. And it's huge. But I think that, you know, me, I'm lucky. My father, and I'm going to say this, made me get up and help him work on the vehicles. Yeah. Man, by the time I was probably a sophomore, freshman in high school, I could change brakes on a car, the alternator, the starter, the fuel pump, the radiator. Man, you name it, I could work on it. And when you're going out with girls in high school and you go for a ride in their car and the brakes are squeaking, you're like, hey, you know, I can change the brakes on this if you want me to. And they're like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, let's just go get the pads. We can take it over to my house and I can take care of it. But then you do it and you do it right and it works. It's a neat deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I first realized, man, it's cool that I know how to do things a lot of people don't know how to do.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big realization there.
It is. But I think too, it makes us so mechanically inclined. I don't think there's anything I can't build or put together. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything I can't tear apart and fix.
Yeah.
But it's because of the life I've lived and the things I've done. I love knowing how stuff works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that a lot. You and I are cut from a very similar cloth in that aspect. I was the kid, I got the coolest toys for Christmas, but I was the kid that just took them apart. My parents would get pissed. Right. Yeah. Because they got me these, like, you know, cool remote control robots or whatever it was. And all I wanted to do was take it apart.
Yeah. How does it work?
How does it work? Right.
I love it.
And so, but, and so I resonate with that a lot, you know, but we hear about all these stigmas surrounding the skilled trades today. We hear about the disinterest from the next generation, right, of about the skilled trades. Where do you think that comes from, and how do we overcome that?
Man, you're hitting my pain points. You know, here's where it comes from. We've been telling kids for, I'm going to say 50 years. You've got to go to college or you're never going to amount to anything. Have you ever heard that?
All the
time. More than once.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We've been telling kids this. Then we go through and we take workshops out of high schools, out of middle schools. I took metalworking in middle school. Mm-hmm. In middle school, I was melting aluminum in a freaking 18,000 degree kiln or something and pouring hot aluminum into a mold that we had made in sand. I mean, they tell kids, oh God, we can't do that. Somebody will hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay. None of us did. We survived. But we take stuff like that out of middle school, out of high school. We tell them they've got to go to college or they're not going to amount to anything. The trades don't sound very fun after that.
Yeah.
And why? Because, well, I don't know how to read a tape measure. I don't know how to use a hammer. You don't know anything at all. And now it's like, hey, you want to get a job as a plumber? It's like, no.
Right.
And I think what we've got to do, we've got to let the principals, the counselors, the teachers, we've got to let their parents. Man, that's a problem to look at a kid and say, hey, look, I hate to tell you, your parents have been lying to you. Not on purpose.
Right.
It's due to ignorance. They don't know.
Yep.
But you can make a great living in the trades. I wish every parent out there in the world that tells their kid, hey, just go to college and then you'll figure out what you want to be. I wish they'd tell them, go get a job in the trades. And after a year, then we'll figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you want to go to college, look here, you live at home, you can save up every paycheck you make all year long.
Yep.
Put it in the bank. It's yours. I was going to help pay for college anyway, but you put this money up, you live at home for one more year, put that $30,000, $40,000 in your bank account. And then we're going to pick a college for you to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. We'd be far better served.
Oh my God.
If that was the route that we went, right? Because I think about this all the time, Roger. It's, I don't have a lick of college under my belt either. I went right from high school. I was actually a stunt man for a long time. That's another story for another day. But no, I see this a lot, and I have the utmost respect for people when I find out that they didn't go to college, right? But then they got into a career and say they wanted to advance in that career in a different trajectory than they were currently in. So they make the conscious decision to go to college for a purpose, right? For a specific purpose. I need to do this because I want to get this, right? As opposed to using it as this catch-all for students that just seem like dollar signs to the universities. Right. And, I see so many people, and this makes me sick, Roger. I see so many people do that. Right. And then they get themselves in so much debt, and the education behind, college debt is not there either. Like, most people don't know that student loans cannot be forgiven in bankruptcy. Right. Like, that's something I think that if more students knew, they'd probably say, wait, hold on a second, what other options do I have? But no one ever tells them this. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very guarded path, and it just seems like an agenda sometimes. And so that's where my frustrations get in. So when you talk about stuff like this, you speak my language, you push my buttons, and just like you, man, I replay these scenarios in my head, and I'm like, man, what's a better way?
And Josh, think about what you just said. Number one, student loans. Yeah. Doesn't work in bankruptcy court. But our current president said, hey, let's just forgive that debt. My thought is, if that educational debt was so worth it, don't you think they'd pay it off? I mean, I'm just asking.
That's how it should work.
But it should. And when he's talking about giving relief, forgiveness for your student loan debt, he's not talking to tradespeople. If you went to trade school, that's a different deal. You got that.
If you went to trade school, your debt's probably paid. Let's be honest.
Isn't it though? And, things like that just blow my mind. I think that we need to let more, and again, I think it's got to go back to the principals, the counselors, the teachers, the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the people that are like, hey, where are you going to college? Yeah, I'm not. Ooh, what are you doing? I'm going to be a plumber. Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's not something aunts and uncles and moms and dads want to hear.
No, but we really do have to educate those who can influence the youth, and here's my thing too, because I try to do a lot of work in this space as well. There's no better way to influence the youth than through their peers, right? Like me going into a school, you going into a school, we can make an impact for those who listen, but the action steps are usually inspired by friends that have walked that path, right? Like, and that's what I've found. So if we can infiltrate, right, I'm going to call it infiltrate. We can infiltrate,
You
the minds of the educators to influence the students, to influence each other. Then I think we have a better opportunity to turn this thing around.
You know, Josh, here's the neat thing about it. Luckily, with what I'm doing on social media, now these kids want to listen to me.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I built a platform and had no idea what I was doing when I did it. But now it's like, I had a teacher tell me one day, she says, Roger, 95% of the kids in school want to be YouTubers. And when I walk in and say, hey, I'm a YouTuber, they're all like, they'll listen. It's huge, but
yeah.
Like you said, they want to listen to their peers, but they're also watching social media. They're watching social media influencers.
Yeah.
And the thing is, most of these social media influencers didn't go to college. So they need to figure out what else to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yet another opportunity in the skilled trades, man. Definitely. All right, let's fast forward a little bit. We've beat this college subject to death. Hopefully people got some good takeaways here, and maybe we opened a couple of eyes. Who knows? Let's see, right? So you got into plumbing. You tried a couple other things, bodyguarding, bartending, that kind of stuff, but then you started your own business. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what was the reasoning behind going the entrepreneurial route as opposed to remaining a plumber or technician, whatever, for somebody else?
Well, luckily for me, I was in the union at the time. I had moved up. I was director of operations for a large mechanical contractor, and I was over the construction. They were getting ready to branch. They had done a lot of commercial service. They were getting ready to branch off into residential service. And I was in the executive board meeting one day, and the new incoming owner, who was a nurse who was inheriting the company from her parents. So they brought her in. So she was starting to learn the trades and had been for a couple of years. Literally says, look, we're getting into residential service, and we're going to market our advertising as we specialize in customer service. We have the best trained plumbers. I'm like, oh my God, I love that. I said, so what kind of training are you doing for customer service? I'm taking notes. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, how are you going to train them in customer service? And she kind of rolls her eyes. She says, Roger, look, all our plumbers know how to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, please, and thank you. I'm like, wow, well, you're all over it right there. I said, so what about the best trained plumbers? What kind of plumbing are you going to, or what kind of training are you going to do? And she says, well, Roger, all our plumbers have licenses. I said, well, every plumber in the state of Texas has a license. She says, yeah, but that means they're the best trained. And I'm just like, you're joking.
No.
And it made me sick. And I walked out of that job on a Friday, not knowing what I was going to do. And I got home and I relaxed that weekend, and I didn't worry about it. I'm a good superintendent. I had a good resume. I knew that I could get a job. And Monday, and now I had been wanting to open my own business. So I had a name. I had a phone, which was my phone. I had business cards with my phone number on it. Didn't have a website yet, anything like that. But I had insurance. This is something I had literally been putting in place. And my phone rang at about 9:00 Monday morning. I don't remember what I was doing at home. And I answered the phone, and it's somebody that I had done plumbing for in the past. And they said, hey, Roger, look, I know you're busy, but our house got hit by lightning last night. It blew a hole in our gas line. They've shut off our gas. I've got a roofing company out here now fixing the roof, but we need the gas line fixed. And it was cold. Said, I know you can't get to us, but please see what you can do. And I was like, hey, as a matter of fact, I can get there today. So I went over there today and jumped through hoops, got everything fixed, had already worked out deals with the inspector to do an after hours inspection, and literally called the gas company, and I'd already worked out a deal with them. And I called them and said, hey, look, we're ready. Turn it on. I got their gas turned on by about 8 o'clock that night. And the inspector and fire department all had already told them it'll be at least 3 or 4 days, maybe a week before the plumbing can get repaired and you can get your gas turned back on. Because it does. It takes about that long to get all that stuff done. And I just jumped through hoops. I said, we're making it happen. They're like, oh my God, Roger, we've never, the inspector, the fire department, everybody's like, look, we've never seen anybody jump through hoops like this and make this happen. And I'm like, well, if I owned a plumbing company, that's how I would take care of my people. And I literally decided right then, you know what? It's time for me to just start my own business. So I did.
That's amazing. I love asking stories like that, man. It's,
you bet.
you know, that's wonderful. Okay. So let me, give me and our listeners, one lesson, right? Try to make it the most important, but of the billion lessons that you've learned, starting, running, and owning a business, give us one lesson from the early days, that could help somebody, if they decided to go out and start a business.
A friend of mine, actually, the guy that I was working with that night owns his own plumbing company here not far from me. And I went and talked to him before I opened mine. And I said, hey, tell me what's it like? And he said, get ready to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. and I thought, wait, man, I'm opening my own company. It's fixing to get easier. And it doesn't. It gets very hard. And you take it personal. If you really love your company, you raise it just like you would a child.
Yeah.
You have your hands involved in everything. You make the decisions. You love it. You nurture it. You grow it. And you want to build from the very beginning a culture that every plumber in town wants to come to work for you. And man, if you can do that, you're going to have an amazing company.
So what did that culture look like for you?
Well, I had to learn that part later, but in the beginning, it was tough.
Yeah.
You want to look, I'm part owner of Rescue Air now here in Dallas. And we have a culture that we probably spend about $10,000 a year training each employee we have. We're part of best practice groups. We believe in product knowledge. We believe in communications. A lot of companies call it sales. It's not sales. It's learning how to communicate with your customer. And if you learn to communicate with your customer, look, I've become a PCM coach, which is process communication model. And it's a personality style. And you learn to communicate with people in their language. If you can learn to communicate with your customers and teach your plumbers that every time they look at a customer, they need to treat them like it's their mother or their grandmother.
Oh.
If you can build a company like that where people, there's so many different things that I say, Brendan Burchard says, when you look at people, pretend they have see me, hear me, acknowledge me, and love me written on their forehead. And that's big. You treat your customers like that, it's huge. And I was speaking for a real estate broker one day to all his agents. And his dad spoke after me. He's a financial advisor. And he literally said, gets up to speak and he's talking. He said, the best advice I can ever give you is fall in love with every customer you have. Because if you fall in love with them, you'll never do them wrong. And I'm like, man, these are the things I need to be thinking about every single day. And just, that's big. And Josh, I think that's what makes us true service companies, not just a company that does plumbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's powerful stuff, Roger. I got goosebumps over here, man. No, that's fantastic. And I love that you said to treat customers like they're your grandma. I have a technician, actually one of my lead technicians, who says that all the time. He says it to me all the time. He says, Josh, these guys, we got to teach them to treat every single customer like they're their grandma. And I was like, I love that.
I love it too. But it makes your job easier, Josh. And think about this. If you send Fred out to do a job and Fred calls you and he's like, hey, Josh, look, man, I'm at a point. I don't know whether to do this or do this or do this. And you automatically know what the right thing to do is. And you say, hey, Fred, if this was your grandmother's house, what would you do? And Fred says, I'd do this. Then why are you calling me?
Mm-hmm.
You already know what to do. You're just asking me if it's the right thing. Would you do it for your grandmother?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Okay, then get her done, brother.
I love it. You're right. It does make it easier. That's fantastic. All right, let's move forward. So
Yes, sir.
So you've got the business, you grew the business, that's a whole different animal in itself. Starting a business and growing a business are two different animals, both equally as vicious, by the way. But it's definitely fun, right? And it's fulfilling and it's rewarding. And then you said about 2 years ago you sold the business, right? Which is a goal for a lot of business owners. So tell me the thought process behind selling the business and the position that puts you in now today.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. You said that's a goal for a lot of people. Every one of your listeners right now needs to realize they need an exit plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And they need to start building that right now or building their company for it. And look, I did a lot of things wrong. Even when it came to selling my company, I didn't do a lot of things right. But you need to build an exit plan. And the best way to do that is to build a company you don't want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you build a company that you do not want to sell, you don't care if it sells or not. You're not like, hey, I want to sell it. Hey, this, hey, that. No, this company, it runs itself. It's magic. It just, man, I come in every Friday and back the truck up and cash jumps in the back of my truck and I drive off. Well, it's not going to be that easy, but man, you can make things happen to where that's really the result you get.
Yeah.
Build a company like that. Build one that you don't want to get rid of. Build one that like, look, this has got my blood, sweat, tears in it. I love it. I've got everything set up perfect. We're making good margins. We're making good numbers. I have the best employees. I have the best customers. Now, when you get ready to sell, your multiplier looks really, really sweet.
Yeah.
Because you're like, look, I don't want to let go of it.
Yeah. And that's what makes it valuable, right? So anybody listening, the fact that you just, I love the way you put that, right? If you build a business that you don't want to sell, that's what's going to get other people to want to buy.
And you got to, and Josh, you know this because you're a businessman, you got to look at that from day one.
Yes.
You can't wait till you're 10 years in the business, say, hey, I want to get ready to sell now. Now I'm going to make everything look amazing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yep.
But the cool thing is when you do, and I learned this from Michael Gerber, one of my first coaches. He wrote the E-Myth book.
Mm-hmm.
I actually hired him as a coach. And one thing that I learned about him or learned from him is when you sell your business, if you're selling to a bigger business or somebody that you know is going to grow this into a bigger business, keep a little percentage of it. And luckily for me, with what I'm doing in social media, that was pretty easy to do. And they're like, well, you keep a percentage, but you keep doing the videos you're doing. You keep talking about Texas Green Plumbing and Rescue Air and all that. And I have. And now almost, 2 years and about 5 days ago is when I sold it. And now they're talking about selling again, but now the business is about 3 times bigger. And the combined business is 3 times bigger, and I own a percentage of it. And of course, it's bigger enough now that the multipliers look even better than they did when I sold mine.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end up walking away with a bigger payday today or when it sells than I did when I sold it. And things like that are amazing.
The power of alignment, right?
It is. It is.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And I'm really glad that you shared that, because this is the side of the skilled trades that I think more people need to see, because it's hard for people, Roger, to see the forest through the trees. Right. And so, you talk about being a plumber, you talk about being an electrician, you talk about being an HVAC tech or a refrigeration technician or a food service technician, whatever. Right. People see, I don't want to fix ovens. I don't want to fix toilets. I don't want to shock myself with electricity, right? You know, I mean, they
Hey, that's why I'm not an electrician right there.
But you know what? They look at this and it makes it really difficult for them to see the end game. Listen, if I were a betting man, I'd probably say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably, when you were 16 years old, getting into the plumbing field, you probably didn't realize that you would be looking at multiple exits of a business. I'm not going to ask you how much you walked away with, right? Or how much you're looking at, but you probably didn't have that number in your head when you chose to be a plumber. Am I right or am I wrong with that?
Oh, you're completely right.
Yeah. So
Completely.
So if people knew, right, if we could tell our stories, like you're telling your story, you're telling it on this podcast. I've seen you on your podcast now and a bunch of the other podcasts you've been on. You're telling this story and we're changing the narrative. So people can actually see, because here's the thing, right? And I'm taking this a whole different direction. This is what happens when I get excited. So
I love it.
So listen, you know, entrepreneurship and business ownership, you know, and being a founder of a business is up on this pedestal today. That's what people want. A lot of people strive for that, you know, but they relate it to the software space or to the social media space or something like that. They don't ever relate it to the skills, right? The skilled trades, being able to learn something for a few years, turn it into a business, right? And I'd venture to say, you know, that being able to open a skilled trade business, because, you know, this is something that I've lived myself too, that skill is invaluable. There's no easier business to open up than the one that you've been learning the skill of for years and years. You know, then you just need to develop that entrepreneurship muscle like you did, right? And if you do it right and you listen to coaches and things like that, you can take it to a place that will fund your greatest passions and your wildest dreams.
If you look at it that way, you know, I had my business partner here the other day for my podcast and I'm interviewing him. And I told you when I start mine, I ask some weird random question from the get-go. And he's sitting across from me and I always tell him, look, we're going to talk about how you got in the trades, how you became a good tradesman, how you started your business, and then how you've grown it to what it is. It's like, okay. So we're sitting there and I'm trying to think, okay, how do I start this? Because I want a good hook. I want something, man, they're going to hear it. So he's sitting there and I look up at him. I said, so Josh, you're a multi-millionaire. And he just starts laughing. He's like, oh my God, I've never said yes to that. I said, no, but you are. And he said, yeah. He said, you know what? I am. And I said, but you're just an electrician. And he said, I know. Yeah. And I mean, yeah. Josh, think about that. And it's funny. His name's Josh too. We can be whatever we want to be as tradespeople.
Yeah.
When you get in the trades, and this is something, look, I'm teaching people about getting in the trades now. And one of the things I teach is know your end game every day, because you're going to have opportunity. I am nowhere near where I was or where I thought I'd be 5 years ago or 10 years ago or any of that. God, even 2 years ago, I'm completely different spot. But know your end game. Do you want to be a business owner? Because one day you can. And if from the day you get into the trade, you're like, look, I want to be great at it. You don't have to be necessarily a great plumber, because that's where our podcast went the other day. I grew up wanting to be a great plumber. Man, I wanted to know more about plumbing than anybody. I've got every endorsement in Texas. I do med gas. I do fire protection systems. I can do anything wet pretty much. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be a great businessman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I should have learned more about business. Number one, I'd have sold for a lot more. I'd have retained a lot more. And my multiplier would be a lot more. But I mean, you know, look, my company was doing $1 million a year when I sold it. And I walked away with a nice 6-figure check when I walked away. And my next check will be a 7-figure check. So it's not a bad deal to walk away from if you build things right and do it right.
Yeah. And I love what you said. You wanted to be a great plumber. He wanted to be a great businessman. For me, Roger, that looks like I want to be a great leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
Three different end games, one industry can accomplish all of it.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing if you think about that, right? Doesn't matter. To your point, the skilled trades can take you anywhere you want to go and allow you to become anything you want to be, so long as you see it that way.
Josh, and you talk about you want to be a great leader, but go back and look. I think you had to become a great tradesman to do that.
Exactly.
Because you've got to earn that respect. You've got to garner that respect. People just don't respect you if you're a half-assed plumber. And Josh is a good leader. I think I'm a good leader. From talking to you, we've got the same mindset, so there's no doubt in my mind. But you don't go through your entire career doing things half-heartedly.
Yeah. And
then wake up one day and say, hey, starting today, I'm going to be a great leader.
That's right.
People look at you like, dude, you're joking, right? You can't even tie your shoes half the time. But I mean, that's why. Yeah. And look, when I train people, I don't teach them. I've got courses set up. Mm-hmm. I don't teach them how to pull pipe, charge refrigerant, pull wires, install GFCIs. I don't teach them any of that. How do you get into the best trade for you and make the most money from the very beginning? And then after that, what things do you have to learn to become a great leader, a great manager, a great foreman, a great superintendent, a great project manager?
Yeah.
What do you have to do to make more money and get better job offers? So, and I've got 4 different levels, but these are the things I teach. I don't need to teach you to be a great tradesman. That's up to you. You want to learn to put pipe together? Great, man, get really good at it. But I can teach you to develop that mindset that is going to separate you from look, when I joined the union, man, they called me every name in the book. I was stupid. I mean, they've got names that I'm not even going to say here. So I made it my goal every day to outperform every freaking plumber on the job.
Yeah.
Do my work better, do it faster, do it straighter. Train my apprentices that worked with me better so we could get more done. And man, when you walk in with that mindset each and every day, you become a good leader. And man, the roads open up and you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get off my high horse now.
Powerful words, man.
Preaching, brother, preaching.
I love it. I love it. Hey, listen, we're coming up at 1:30. I want to respect your time. I got just a couple more questions for you.
You're good. You're good. You're my last thing I got booked today.
All right, right on. So okay, so we talked about you kind of growing up, getting into the trade, getting into plumbing. We talked about you starting the business, growing the business, exiting the business. So the only thing left, Roger, from your journey standpoint, is what does tomorrow look like for you? What's next for Roger Wakefield? You know, why are you doing? You just started this podcast 5 months ago. You know, you're doing this tour on podcast. I mean, you're out there, man. So what are you doing next?
You know what? I'm trying to make the world a better place. We've talked a lot about student debt. There's over $1 trillion in student debt. There's 1 million unfilled trades jobs across the United States today. And unfortunately, right now, this year, next year, last year, right where we're at, each year for every 10 people that retire, only about 4 are getting back in the trades. That's going to hurt America. 5 or 10 years from now, there's not going to be enough plumbers, electricians, and HVAC techs to take care of people the way they really need to be taken care of. And that breaks my heart. That it does, because it's such a wonderful profession to get in. So what I'm doing nowadays, I'm growing on social media. Like I said, I've told you, I've created training courses. I'm working on all that. I'm actually building an app. That's my beautiful mug right there. I'm building an app. But really, it all boils down to I have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Nice.
And it's to help 1.5 million people get into the trades. if I help 1.5 million people get in, I can help alleviate some of this problem that the United States is going to have if we don't. So help 1.5 million people get in the trades, help 750,000 current tradesmen learn to get better, learn the things that are going to help you move up, get better job opportunities, make more money, bring more scratch home for your wife and your kids, help them pay for that college education if you want to, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then help 500,000 people learn how to start their own businesses. When you're in a spot like me and you're not happy and you're like, look, this company I'm working for is full of it, you need to know what to do. And Michael Gerber talked a lot about that. And I think that's where that stuck with me is he talks about the fact that, we send people to school to be doctors and lawyers and CPAs, and we never teach them how to run a business.
Yeah.
And I think that's sad. But then my last group is to help 250,000 current entrepreneurs learn to use networking, social media, Google to grow their businesses. And that way they don't go home at night and worry about making that phone ring. They don't worry about feeding the families that come into them every day and expect them to put food on their plate. So my BHAG is to help 3 million people in the trades. And I see a way to do it.
I love that. This is going to bleed right into my last question because you kind of half answered it with that. But maybe it's more of a summary. So I talk about both in the book and the podcast how the skilled trades lets anybody live their definition of success, right? So they can push anyone towards success, but by their own definition, which I think is a gap, right? We tend to, as a society, define success for others. This is what it looks like. You need a house, you need money in the bank, you need a car, you need 2.5 kids and a golden retriever. This is success. Except for it's not. To some people, maybe, but to everybody, absolutely not. Some people never want kids. Some people want to travel the world. Some people want $10 million in the bank. Some people want whatever, right? To help 3 million tradespeople. So I like to ask all my guests at the end, how do you define success and how have the trades helped you achieve it?
To be honest, I define success by helping others. I've got goals. I've got things that I want, but I had to change me. I'm not the same kid that quit high school. I'm not the same guy that was a foreman or a superintendent or even director of operations. That guy could not do what I'm doing today. and I don't mean it bad, but I had to become a different me. If I'm going to, back then, and I hate to say this nowadays, I used to say, look, I'm right. I'm always right. I'm not going to argue because I know I'm right. And I had a lot to learn. And I think that I define success now by how many people can I help? How many lives can I touch? How many people can I give a hand up to? And we've all got to find our way of doing it. We've all got to find out what works for us. But, I truthfully think that by creating what I've created, I'm going to help people change their lives. And everybody listening to your podcast needs to understand. And I don't care if you're not even in the trades yet. If you're in the trades, if you're thinking about starting your own business, or you've already got one and you're trying to figure out how to make the phone ring, you can grow your company as big as you want. You can be a millionaire. You can be a multi-millionaire. And it's not hard. You just have to do the right thing. But in order to do the right thing, you got to learn the right thing. And I'd be willing to bet if you're sitting there listening to this podcast, you're already on that path. You're trying to learn new things. People that learn that there are no limits. There's nobody listening right now that I can tell them you're only going to make $100,000 a year. And I hope you all agree with that. I have no control over how much you make. But if I'm going to tell you you can't make 100,000, I can also tell you you're not going to make 100 million. And you can say, oh, yes, I can. Hold my beer and watch me. Guys, you can do whatever you want to do. And that's what I think I'm here for. And, you know, when you first asked that, I kind of smiled because I go back and read comments in my YouTube. And I think I'm already successful. Mm-hmm. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I want to end up. And I don't think success is defined by your end game. I think success is defined by how you feel every day when you get up. And that's pretty cool.
Love that. I love that very much, Roger. That's fantastic. Success is not defined by your end game. That's great. Oh, I really appreciate that insight. And I hope you guys out there are listening. This is some gold. You better be out there with notebooks and pens writing this shit down because it is valuable. Roger, before we go, where can people find you?
You know, the best place is go to rogerwakefield.com. I've got my own website. We're doing things. I'll have links in there. The app we're working on is going to be wakefield.app. But everybody can really go to rogerwakefield.com and see what we do and what we're about. We're continuously adding that, putting everything in as the courses are being finished up and developed. And, you know, there's a lot of free content in my membership and my app. And it's all cool stuff. And I want everybody to find out that they can get better. And that's what it's all about.
Right on. Well, Roger, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us today. I can't thank you enough. I know you're a busy guy, but my audience, I'm sure, appreciated this entire conversation. So thank you.
Josh, thank you. This has been a pleasure. And I love that we finally got together. I do think our stories, our goals, what we're trying to do in this niche, this industry, I think we're on parallel paths. So, brother, thank you for everything you do.